So I'm assuming that today we should be learning in the merits of the Bosali.
Yes. Leilu Nishmat Rabbi Israel ben Rabbi Mis'od Abu Chatzera. Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livracha. Beautiful.
I did light a nair for him last night.
Yeah? Wonderful.
As did I.
Did you see what I sent? Did you see
that's why. It was, you were the inspiration. I saw what you sent. So
what I sent you is essentially a ritual that you can use for every yortzeit, any yortzeit of a tzaddik, and any time that you decide to pray in the merit of a tzaddik, to connect to a tzaddik, that's the ritual that you would use.
Right. Okay.
I've done it all except for the Tehillim at this point. Well, and now the one.
But that's wonderful. But that you can copy and you can turn, you can put it on your fridge.
On the fridge, right?
Put it on your fridge or something, and whenever you light a candle, or whenever in the morning, if you want a special prayer, you'll have it right in front of you. You'll have the whole, and if you like, maybe you can even paste in there a little kapitel of Tehillim and a little piece of Zohar on the same page, so you have it all in one place. Maybe I'll do that for you.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome. You just made an offer that, we're jumping all over.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, wonderful. So let us start. So you're all home alone, huh?
I'm home alone.
Home alone. You're not getting into too much trouble, I hope.
So far I'm okay. so far the Yetzer Hara hasn't got me in too much trouble.
Okay.
But part of that's because I'm, the health's not recovering as quickly as I hoped or imagined. So,
what did you say?
I said part of that's because my health is not recovering as quickly as I had hoped or imagined. So so for some reason I'm when I'm bringing up a lot of mucus that is containing a lot of blood.
Oh.
Yeah. So so hopefully this is going to go away, but so far it's not. And
maybe you should see a doctor, no?
If it doesn't go away soon, I'm going to go see a doctor for sure.
You have a health insurance here? You have a tourist health insurance?
I have health insurance that will cover wherever you're at.
Right. Okay, good. All right. So, B'zchut the Baba Sali, we should all have a Yeshua and everything that we need physically and spiritually. Health, wealth, children, happiness, joy, success, and all our goals and desires and needs should all be met instantaneously with Hashem's infinite intelligence and power and unconditional kindness. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so we were speaking about how the sins are of a person. The sins are a corruption of the combination of the Dibur, the world of Dibur, the world of Malchut, which is Dibur, which is the words of the Torah, and those letters, when they are corrupted and rearranged in a wrong arrangement, then that is in essence really the Malchut being put into exile by the Klipa. The Malchut, which is the power, the ability to lead, the power to rule, is exiled by the Klipa. So instead of Hashem being in a revealed way the king, which is that power to rule, now it's kind of like the world is led by the Yetzer Hara, by the Klipa, unfortunately. And that's what a person does on a personal level when he sins. He is putting his small world in the hands of the Klipa. He's giving the power to rule over his personal world to the Yetzer Hara instead of to Hashem, right, who is in control. And so when a person confesses, that confession is taking those words, the Dibur, the Malchut, that was corrupted, and now by saying that same word of sin, right, the letters of sin, a person says, Ashamnu, Baganu, Gazalnu, those are the words of the sins that a person did. He is expressing them, the same words, but he's expressing them in a way of admitting that it was wrong what I did, and I regret what I did, and I'm repenting, and I'm returning to you, Hashem. And I recognize that what I did was not from the true me. I'm not identifying with it. I'm identifying with who I truly am at the core. That is someone that is my holy soul, which is part of you, Hashem, and I'm completely accepting upon myself your kingship. You're the true leader, the true power to rule. I'm giving to you, Hashem, and that's what a person is doing in the confession.
Can I call time out for a second? Obviously, when you're doing vidui and you're saying all these words, in theory, you should be identifying with them and how they relate to you in your own life, right?
Yes.
How do you do that in a minyan?
How do you do that in a minyan? Well, a person would not start to do that when he's in a minyan. A person would probably sit down and work through the siddur on his own time. And then once a person has understood and written down notes and stuff like that, then once you're in the minyan, it takes a lot less time, and it's almost kind of like you're reminding yourself of this, of that. You understand? It's kind of like that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to come daven in our holy yeshiva in Haz Shalom, where davening every morning takes 2 hours plus, and then you'll have time to do it. No, but even then it doesn't. Even then, it's not always enough. So the best way to do it is to take your time on your own time, sit down, write notes, contemplate what they mean, what it means, and do that introspection, etc. And then when you come to the minyan, you're all prepared, and it takes a lot less time. And maybe one or the first couple times, yes, you'll be behind, but then eventually you'll be able to do your work a lot quicker. That's the best answer I can give you. It's not the best answer, though. I admit it's not the best. I confess it's not the best answer. The Baal Tanya was not very happy with that. The Baal Tanya was, he had one of the things that his Chassidim had to accept upon themselves was that the davening, they would daven slowly. Every Shachrit, they would daven very slowly with contemplative davening on every word and what it means. It would take a couple of hours every morning. That's how the Chassidim would daven. But
it used to be that way, huh?
What?
It used to be that way by Chabad.
Yeah, by most Chassidim.
Yeah.
But this is the best that we can do with what we have.
Yeah.
So when a person confesses, that confession is the words, the corrupted words coming out. Now he's taking those same words, the corrupted combination of the letters of the sin, right? That's the sin. And instead of lo tigzol, for example, or lo tignov, it says in the Torah, do not steal, he says ganavnu, right? He says I stole. So that's the corrupted combination of the letters, but he's saying it now in a way that is rectifying it. And those corrupted words come out of his bones, and he is healed. He is healed through that. So now Rabbi Nachman says, so Rabbi Nachman also brought up the whole story with Yehuda and the confession of Yehuda, and his bones were rolling around in the coffin, and the bones is what get the part of the body that is the most receives the destruction of a person's sin, the pain of a person's sin, is the bones of a person. And Rabbi Nachman brought a pasuk to that effect, that it's the bones that are broken from a person's sins. But then at the same time, when a person prays or when a person confesses, that prayer and that confession comes out of a person's bones. So the confession is really healing. It's a way to heal, therapy for a person's body, physical and spiritual, from the sins that a person transgressed, that a person did. And those sins, what they did is they break a person's bones, because they are etched in a person's bones, and they go from one side of the bone to the other side of the bone. So they break them. They fracture the bones. The sins of a person, they fracture the bones from one end to the other, a complete break through and through. And that's why Rabbi Nachman is going to say right now, the sin is called avera in the Torah. Why is it called an avera, a transgression? But avera means that it crosses over from one end to the other, from one end of the bone to the other end of the bone. It's a break, it's a fracture, complete fracture, a complete break from one end to the other end, from one side to the other side. So that's what the word avera means. It's a crossover, like a transgression, right? It transpasses through the bone. we have to remove that. He says, on the other hand, the mitzvah, the word mitzvah means to join together. Mitzvah is a joining. It also means a commandment, mitzaveh, but the word tzavta, which is a word that comes from the same source as mitzvah, means to combine. Because the mitzvah, that's what it does. It combines, it rectifies the person from all the fragmentation that he had from his sins. And it puts everything back together in one structure. Just like the bones of Yehuda. Yehuda represents the Malchut. And the confession of Yehuda that was reminded and revealed through Moshe Rabbeinu being the source of the Malchut, the Tiferet, the fire, the Torah, right? Because the main aspect of Torah is not just the Sefer Torah, it's the Talmid Chacham, that's the Moshe Rabbeinu. And that aspect is where the Malchut is returned to. The Malchut is returned to its source, because we said that this whole corruption of the Avera breaks the bones of a person is in essence the Malchut, the Dibur, being put into exile. So it's separated from its source. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu is the source of the Malchut, and you need to, through the confession to the Talmid Chacham, you are returning the Malchut to its source. And that's what puts all the bones back together in one structure, in a complete structure, in a peaceful, harmonious structure, holistically. Okay? So that's what he's going to say now. This is the connotation of the word avera, which goes, it crosses over through a person's bone, me'ever le'ever, from one side to the other side. Mitzvah leshon itchabut, and a mitzvah, on the other hand, it means to join together. When a person performs many mitzvot, so all of the bones of a person and all the broken pieces of the bones are all reunited and combined together. As it says in the pasuk that Hashem protects all of his bones. And what's the continuation of the pasuk? Achat mehen lo nishbara. Not one of them are broken, right? Hashem fixes those bones and he puts everything back together. V'zeh perush chamat melech malachim mavet. And now he's going to explain based on this a pasuk. I think it's in Mishlei that says the king's wrath, chamat melech, the anger of the king, malachim mavet, is the angel of death, the messenger of death. Okay, so ve'ish chacham yichaperena, that's the end of the pasuk, and a wise man, an ish chacham yichaperena, will cause atonement. He will atone for that, or he will pacify that anger. Okay, so this is going to explain the power of the Talmid Chacham, the Moshe Rabbeinu. Says Rabbi Nachman, ki chamato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu bishvil hamalchut sheishpil al yedei avonatav. What this aspect of anger by Hashem, where does that come from, and what does that come about? That comes about because a person has demeaned the malchut among the nations. A person demeaned and embarrassed and disrespected the malchut and sent her into exile among the nations through a person's sins, right? That's what we said. That's the essence of what sin is. He's giving the power to rule to the Yetzer Hara instead of to Hashem. The power to rule is the malchut. And he demeaned the malchut through a person's sins. Ve'ish chacham yichaperen. So in essence, that's what causes anger by Hashem. That's what causes wrath, ka'as by Hashem. Chema, that's what causes chema by Hashem. What's interesting is that when a person sins, it comes about, or not usually, always, comes about because of lack of dat. As we saw in the Gemara, that a person doesn't sin unless he has this foolish spirit that enters him. The foolish spirit is when the dat is removed, leaves the person.
Das in the galus.
The das is in the galus, yeah. So when a person sins, it comes from a lack of dat, the foolish spirit, the ruach shtut, says the Gemara. And that comes from kotzer ruach. The way the Torah describes the physical characteristics of someone that is lacking that, it's someone that has a shortness of breath. Kotzer ruach. Kotzer ruach, shortness of breath, is also another way that the Torah describes the opposite of, what's the opposite of kotzer ruach? Shortness of breath is a length of breath. Length of breath is called arichat apayim, a long breath. And that is a way that the Torah describes patience, the opposite of anger. So in essence, what I'm saying is that from the Torah you see a beautiful connection between the fact that a person sins. When a person sins, he causes wrath by Hashem, and that sin itself comes from a person lacking dat, which is a lack of patience. A lack of patience is really anger. So every sin that a person does is in essence an expression of a state of anger, on the person, in the person. And sometimes a person expresses that anger in one way, and sometimes a person expresses it in another way. There are many ways, depression is also an expression of anger, but depression is when a person takes the anger and focuses it towards themselves on the inside and keeps it on the inside and represses it. That's what depression is. Anger, the way we usually, is just an expression of that same midah. When we say anger, we're referring to a certain state that is just expressed as anger. But sin is another expression of anger. Sin is an expression of anger, and anger is really a state of, at the core, it's a state of foolishness, a state of lack of patience. It's the lack of patience, the lack of the length of breath. It's a shortness of breath that is being expressed either in anger or depression or sin. These are all expressions of that same state of mind. They are all the expressions of the same state of mind. And that's why whatever we do, as we know, the rule is whatever we do here in this world on a personal level, we affect, so to speak, by Hashem. Midah keneged midah, as the Baal Shem Tov says also, Hashem is your shadow. As you are, He is. And therefore, when a person sins, this is not the deeper understanding behind it, why when a person sins, he causes the wrath of Hashem. Because when he is sinning, that's an expression of that same state of mind. And so when you are in this way, you are also in anger when you're sinning. In essence, you're in anger. You're expressing that state of mind, which is the opposite of the length of breath, the opposite of patience, the opposite of joy, the opposite of being at peace, inner peace, right? And so you cause that, kiviyachol, so to speak, you affect that by Hashem also. And that's another explanation for this, that Rabbi Nachman is saying, that the anger of Hashem is when a person sins because a person demeaned the malchut and sent her into exile. So what's the tikkun for that? The tikkun, ve'ish chacham yichaperena. The tikkun is that this wise man will pacify that wrath. I know who's the wise man? Who's the man of chokhmah? The man with this elevated consciousness, expanded consciousness. Chacham, again, chacham is the opposite of shoteh. It's the opposite of the foolishness, that foolishness state that a sinner has. The Talmid Chacham, Hainu bechinat Talmid Chacham, bechinat Moshe, the aspect of Moshe, hu yichaper lo. He will atone and he will pacify, remove that wrath. One of the Yud 13 attributes, Yud Gimel Midot Rachamim, is that Hashem, he forgives the sins of a person for the remnant, for whatever is remaining. That's what the translation is. So one of the explanations, simple translation, is for the rest of Am Yisrael. L'sherit nachalato. That's what the pasuk says. But the Gemara makes a drasha on this. What does it mean that Hashem forgives the sins for the remnant, for what is remaining, or for the one that is remaining? So the Gemara explains that to be referring to someone that is on the level of seeing himself as a remnant. Someone who sees himself as a remnant, someone who sees himself as what's left over. someone that sees himself as left over. That's absolute bitul, absolute nullification. He doesn't see himself as a significant being that stands by himself. He sees himself only as part of the whole, part of Hashem. That's what bitul is, right? That's the aspect of hishtavut, equanimity. Equanimity is this, and I have a proof that I learned just yesterday in the Gemara, Masechet Chulin, and it's beautiful, it's coming up. Proof that this aspect of, 1 second, I'm going to show it to you in the Gemara. This aspect of equanimity is the aspect of Chachma. And Chachma is exactly what Rabbi Nachman is saying here, the Talmid Chacham. The Talmid Chacham, what's a Talmid Chacham, says Rabbi Nachman, is this person who's Lish'erit. He sees himself as remnants, what's left over. And that's the aspect of equanimity. I'm not a separate entity on my own that has desires and it has to be this way and not that way. I am part of the whole. And being part of that whole that I recognize is the infinite good, I also recognize that everything that happens in my life is an expression of that infinite good. So the Gemara says here, Amar Rav Chizda. Masechet Chulin speaks a lot about, mostly about all the halachot of shchita.
Shchita, right? Yeah.
And kashering the animal, and now the third chapter and third parak in Masechet Chulin is all the halachot of what makes an animal treifa, meaning if an animal has these blemishes, these like a broken certain parts of the body are broken or cut or missing or whatever, so the animal cannot live for very long. It's already considered like an animal that's going to die,
Right.
and that's already dead basically, and therefore you can't eat it. Even if you shecht it kosher, it's not kosher. That's a treifa. Right. So sometimes you have questions that after they slaughter an animal, they bring it to the mashgiach, looks over all the inner parts of the animal, and if he finds one of these problems, so then even though he shechted it properly, they have to sell the animal to a goy. They have to throw it out. Right. They can't eat it. So sometimes you have a question, you're not sure, and you bring the question to a Talmid Chacham, and his answer could determine whether a whole animal. It could determine whether a person is going to lose a couple $1,000s. A whole animal is very expensive, right? Now, what about a tzaddik? What about a Talmid Chacham? That can he determine for his own animal? Let's say he slaughtered his own animal. Now he has a question, right? Is he allowed to determine for himself whether this is kosher or not? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chizda, Ezer Talmid Chacham ze haro'eh trefa le'atzmo. Rav Chizda says that a person, who is a Talmid Chacham? What constitutes a Talmid Chacham? Okay, just like what we're learning now in Rabbi Nachman. What's a Talmid Chacham? Rabbi Nachman says someone that has this aspect of seeing himself as the leftover, the remnants, lish'erit nachalato. So the Gemara says, Rav Chizda says, who's a Talmid Chacham? Ze haro'eh trefa le'atzmo. That's a person who is able to see when he has a suffix, he has a doubt whether something is kosher or tarif, his own animal, le'atzmo, for his own animal, he's able to determine for himself. So that's obviously someone that has this aspect of equanimity, right? That he is not at all going to side.
His own self-interest doesn't get in the way.
For his own benefit, because it's him. What did he say?
His own self-interest does not change his judgment.
Yes, his own self-interest doesn't change his judgment. Some of the commentaries here explain that it means that because he has a doubt when it comes to his own animal, so he will not be lenient. He will always
be more stringent.
Okay, but the point is that he's able to determine for his own animal without involving any of self-interest. That's the aspect of equanimity. And Reb Chizda says that's what constitutes a Talmid Chacham. That's the definition of a Talmid Chacham. So we see that Talmid Chacham is someone that has the aspect of equanimity. And then he goes on to say, Ve'amar Rav Chizda, Eizehu soneh matanot yichyeh. He brings a pasuk from Mishlei. who is considered someone, as Shlomo HaMelech says, he hates presents. He who hates receiving presents will live. Yeah. Who is that? Someone who's able, a Talmid Chacham, who is able to see his own treifot. He's able to determine for himself his own treifot. So he has that aspect of equanimity. He doesn't include his self-interest in the decision. So what is the Soneh Matanot Yechia? Soneh Matanot Yechia is that a person is not moved by presence, by, this person, I can possibly benefit from this person in this way, and I can possibly benefit from that person in that way, and that's why it's going to affect my judgment and the way I act towards this person as opposed to that person. Person like that is not in the place of Yechia, of life. The place of life, according to this pasuk in Mishlei of Shlomo HaMelech, is when a person is unaffected by matanot, by all the presents. He is not looking, there are people in this world that are givers, and there are people that are takers. And what we have to recognize in ourselves is whether we are mostly a taker or mostly a giver. The Talmid Chachamim, someone who is defined as a Talmid Chacham, is someone who is not mostly, but all the time, a giver. We have to recognize that sometimes we think to ourselves, we fool ourselves into thinking that we are givers, but in our giving, we are really taking. Sometimes, for example, a person can give a Torah class, and he's doing it only for the honor, the respect that he will receive from that. So his whole Torah class is taking rather than giving. And sometimes you can be receiving something, but really you're giving. Like the Gemara says, that someone who's very, very important person, he can marry a woman. You know how a person, in order to marry a woman, he has to give her a shave pruta. He has to give her something that's worth at least one coin. It has to be worth something, right? Mm-hmm. But what if a woman gives this man a coin? Let's say the woman gives the man something worth, a lot of money or whatever. But this man is very, very important. And the fact that he's receiving this gift from her is considered like she's receiving from him more than he's receiving from her. So in that case, says the Gemara, he can marry her with that pleasure that she is receiving, that he is receiving the gift from her. So the point is that giving and taking is not clear always. You have to pay attention. Am I giving or am I taking?
Yeah, sometimes somebody might take tzedakah, for example, simply to facilitate the mitzvah of giving tzedakah.
Right, that's true. That's true. But the point is that, do we see ourselves, am I in my life more giving? Am I point in doing what I'm doing in order to give? Or is the point in doing what I'm doing in order to receive? Right. So Shlomo HaMelech says that if your point in living your life is always to contribute to others, to give to others, to enhance other people's lives, to add value to other people's lives, then you're in the aspect of life, yichyeh. But a person who's the opposite, a person who is all about receiving and everything they do, even when they give, their whole focus, even if the other person doesn't feel it maybe consciously, the other person thinks that they received out of this giving and taking. Right. But your focus is on the receiving, then that person is, that's the aspect of not life, of death. Now, according to
can we call timeout? Any chance we could stop here?
Yeah. Let me just finish this one sentence. Okay. Now the Torah says that the aspect of life, living, comes from the sphere of Chokhmah. Like it says, the Chokhmah, which is the aspect of Chokhmah, will give life to those that own it. Meaning someone that owns Chokhmah will have life. Chokhmah is what gives a person life. Life comes from Chokhmah. And we said that Chokhmah is the equanimity. And we said that life is the aspect of being giving and not being taking. When a person is focused on giving and not taking. So if a person wants to connect themselves to Chokhmah, be in that focus of giving and not taking, which is the aspect of equanimity, where a person doesn't see himself as a separate entity that wants to grab and wants to take for himself. Person sees himself as part of the whole, and that everything that he does is to add to the good, to the value of others. I'm not taking, I'm giving. That's the aspect of the Talmid Chacham, and that's the aspect that Rabbi Nachman says is where he sees himself as the leftover, the remnant. And that's the aspect that pacifies, removes the wrath of Hashem, right? And that's the aspect that rectifies the Malchut. It's the aspect of equanimity, the aspect of Chokhmah, the aspect of Bitul, being a remnant, being left over and not seeing oneself as a separate entity, seeing oneself as a giver, giving instead of taking, being focused on adding value to others instead of taking for my own self. That's the point we wanted to explain here.
Beautiful.
Okay. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Rav Yosef, what did you decide about Shabbat?